Going into the 20th century, Latin American thinkers were divided politically and philosophically into liberals and conservatives. But as the Russian Revolution prevailed in Eurasia, a new group of thinkers and doers emerged across Latin America: the Communist Socialists. Communist Socialists sought to relieve the two terribly persistent problems of Latin America: poverty and inequality. They thought that the Enlightenment ideals of the revolutionary era had come up short, and that Soviet Russia's success was proof that Marxism's grandest ideal of a classless society and its tool of class struggle could also lift and modernize Latin America. The Peruvian intellectual and political philosopher José Carlos Mariátegui, for example, put a name on what he saw keeping Latin Americans from modernizing. The problem of the Indian is what he called it. And according to Mariátegui, it had everything to do with keeping the indigenous dependent in every way on the Europeanized and landed elite. The problem of the Indian, Mariátegui said, is a problem of land. The Chilean Nobel laureate Gabriela Mistral believed along the same lines, but she added women as a specific category of people whose subjugation had to be addressed. Tierra, Indio, Mujer, or land, the indigenous, and woman, were keys to Latin American future prosperity, and all had to be freed from the past constraints of colonial ways, according to Mistral. The Argentine Marxist revolutionary physician and military theorist Che Guevara fought to end the exploitation of man by man and for the installment of communism, socialism in Cuba, the Republic of Congo in Africa, and in Bolivia. A second Chilean Nobel laureate, the poet Pablo Neruda, was exiled from Latin America for his Marxist beliefs and support of Vladimir Lenin, as well as Latin American communists, including Cuba's Fidel Castro. In Mexico, communist socialist influencers generated the idea of mestizaje. Mestizaje was an ideal to elevate the union between the indigenous and European, and specifically people of mixed indigenous and European ancestry as the Latin American ideal. Proponents of mestizaje believed the only way to classless society and a relief of so much poverty was through racial mixing and the emergence of a never-seen-before Latin American culture, richly rooted in both the most admirable in the indigenous and whatever was good in the European. But all across Latin America and throughout the 20th century, Latin Americans fought through countless wars and political movements for land reform, which was basically the idea that the indigenous need land for Latin America to modernize. Indigenous groups rose in Bolivia, Peru, Mexico, Ecuador, and Guatemala to claim land rights. After World War II, socialist, democratically elected governments rose to power throughout Latin America, promising to alleviate poverty and inequality permanently. In modern Latin America, democracy was most often tied to socialism, not capitalism as it is in the United States. In the end, by the mid-20th century, Latin American liberals had split. Many aligned, somewhat or wholly, with communist socialists. Others with social Christians, which was the new name for conservatives. The Catholic Church also split into two main factions: priests of the people, who sympathized with communist socialist ideals but wanted none of the atheism of Marxism, and, of course, the ever-stalwart conservative side of the Roman Catholic Church. As a side note, the current Pope, Pope Francis, comes from the long line of Latin American priests of the people that had its inception really in the 16th century with the Dominican friar Bartolomé de las Casas, when he defended the indigenous and their eternal status within the Catholic Church.